Hello, my name is Michael Melfi, part of Taylor English and the Taylor English General Counsel Group. In this video, we're going to be talking about limited liability companies, LLCs, why they're great, what to be looking out for, how you should be using them in your business, and maybe why you'd want to speak with a professional like an attorney when looking to set one up for your entity formation. As an entrepreneurial lawyer, a lot of times I get asked about, can you set up an entity for me? What really does that mean? There's lots of different entity types. There's lots of reasons why you would set that up. And typically there's an intro conversation we have to discuss that. This first one, and the one that's most probably prolifically used is what's called an LLC, or a limited liability company. This is basically a pass-through taxation entity that's a partnership or a sole proprietorship. Okay, Michael, what does that mean? Basically what you're doing is you're utilizing state regulations to be able to set up an entity, an alter ego, another being, something that is meant to create an entity that you can operate under, that you can run your business under, that you can do business dealings under, that you can invest under, that you can take actions under that fall outside of you as an individual and your personal tax return. Does it sometimes flow up to your tax return? Yes. We're not going to get into the tax implications of this, but just know when selecting an entity, always take into consideration the tax implications. And you should always make sure to speak with a tax professional, who's a CPA or a tax lawyer. Whenever we work with our team and when we work with our clients, we always make sure to at least spend a little time having those conversations around that. So when you think about this limited liability company, the idea is you are going to limit the liability, as the name says, for the owner, right? So the idea is that this is not you as an individual, it is an entity. And inside this entity, it's going to have, just like you have a social security number, it's going to have an EIN number. An EIN number is the identifier that is given to you by the IRS for your entity. That EIN is what allows you, with that and a few other documents, to go to a bank and set up a bank account. It is with that you would ultimately file a tax return one day. So it's your unique identifier that you have for your business. So that's an important part to set up. Now, remember, we said it was an alter ego, or it was ultimately an entity that limited your liability. So now as you begin to operate in that entity, and disclaimer, operate legally, not willfully or negligently doing things that are criminal in nature, but when you are operating legal business under statute, if something are to happen, what it does is it starts to create an invisible wall so that someone cannot come after you personally for the actions taken by the company. So one of the main reasons is it limits liability. That is a general statement, and you should definitely consult with a professional about what that really means for your particular instance and your business, whether it be a product or service. The other thing we talked about was the tax. Always make sure you're looking at the tax and how it affects the corporate tax versus the personal tax. When we talk more about corporations, that's going to be something that you have to take into consideration. I think the biggest attribute when you're thinking about an LLC is their flexibility, from how they're managed to how they're operated to day-to-day decisions. They're much more loose in the structure around them, and how you're able to put them together and how complicated they are is as much as you want it to be. It can be as simple as we're one person or two people that are working together as members in this operating agreement to do something. It could be something a lot more complex than that, but you really dictate that. I think it's really important to really understand that piece, because a lot of times people come to me and they start asking, and one of the first questions I always ask is, how many owners are there going to be, and are you going to take on funding? When you understand that, you start to be able to determine what's the proper structure, and is an LLC going to work for this type of business or not? I think the other thing is that you can have multiple LLCs. I just had a call yesterday with a client where he said, I do all my business dealings under this LLC. I said, well, that's great, but we got to carve out your different assets, and we need to start this business that operates, that generates cash flow. It should be in its own entity. When you start dumping all the assets in there, all the liabilities come with it. And so when you think about it in a non-business sense, when people are doing real estate, it's advised usually, unless there's other strategic reasons, that each entity they own is in their own LLC. Each business or each asset you own should be in its own LLC. Now, can those LLCs have interactions between them, have shared resources, can have expenses between them? Yes. But the idea is you're isolating the asset and the liabilities to one entity. And as I said before, each one of these is regulated by state law, state regulations. There's state acts around this, and there's case law around it that's governed at the state level. One thing you'll find is that at the state level, each state's going to be a little bit different. Now, it's been said that there's certain states that are better. I hear Delaware all the time. And why Delaware? Delaware has a strong, robust act behind it that talks about how LLC should be governed. It also has case law and it has history behind it. Now, I'm not saying you file in Delaware. There's many times that we file in any state, whether it be Michigan or Georgia or California or Texas or New York, or you name whatever state you're in. It really depends on what the business is going to do, where the nexus of operations is, and ultimately what makes the most sense for that business based on what its purpose is and how many owners it has and whether or not the funding is going to come in. And so those are some of the key areas that we look at. Typically, last thing I would say is when you do work with a professional, whether you choose to work with someone on our team or someone else, what you do want to make sure of is they have experience setting up entities. Setting up an entity is not difficult. You go to the state, you go to the IRS, you fill out a form. That's not what's needed. What's needed is the analysis to make sure you have a custom suit, you have a custom pair of shoes, you have a custom built home that is going to properly house your business and your ideas. And having that subject matter expert, having that counselor to help guide you through that process of what otherwise would be some attorney documents is such a valuable and important part. Thank you again for watching this video. And when you are thinking of setting up an entity, the next time you know someone who needs to set up an entity, make sure to contact a professional. Make sure to contact one of the team members here at Taylor English so that we can help guide you through that process to help talk through what's important to make sure you have an entity that fits for your business products and services. Thank you again for watching this video.